Hey guys, Coach Coco here. We're going on Instagram Live with Coach Mitch Dillon from Dillon Strength. He's all the way up there in Canada, and we're really excited about having him on here. He's a strength coach. He's got a background in rugby and also jiu-jitsu. So he has some great insights. Him and I really hit it off at a conference we went to. Him and I went to a conference back in November, Underground Strength Con. Coach Evanesh brought it back. It was hosted over at Varsity House, where Joe Riggio, Dan Goodman, those guys from the Business of Strength, they do a lot of leadership and gym business style seminars and workshops. And one of the big things I took away from that experience was just the power of mentorship, but not only that, the power of partnership, especially with the people you can meet when you go to these types of events, right? So a lot of people, are hesitant to pull the trigger, so to speak. And that's where I met Mitch. So I also wanted to give him an intro because we talked about mindset specifically, and he's big into breathing, and he's utilized not only with his own clients and athletes, but with himself. He's a pretty active jiu-jitsu practitioner and competitor. So happy to bring him on. And without further ado, we'll get him on board here in a second. Hitting the Instagram live on a Saturday. A lot of people will say this isn't the best time to hop on, but there is no perfect time. That's the thing. If you're somebody who's a content creator or in the social media space, like you can't be concerned with the opinions of others. Like you make content that you think is important, that you think is valuable, right? I think you end up getting lost in the sauce, so to speak, when you're trying to get likes and things like that, where I kind of think about when I post something, is this going to help a wrestler? Is this going to help the audience I have? So I think it's a better way to approach it. I tell my wrestlers the same thing, right? If you have to be perfect, it's it's probably not the best thing. So you just gotta sometimes just keep throwing stuff at the wall, hoping it sticks. And you're not going to be at a tournament and it's going to be perfect. You might be at a tournament and they might call you back 5 minutes, you know, later, 10 minutes later, right? And you might be sitting there like that's not the proper warm up time, but you got to be ready to go. You got to be ready to go. So without further ado, we got a nice pic of Mitch's bikes. What's happening, man?
Not much, brother. How are you doing?
Yeah, just talking to the people, giving you a brief intro here, chatting it up. How we doing?
Good, man. Good. Got my bikes out today and had a good workout today. And yeah, just working with a bunch of clients most of the day. So I'm doing great.
Beautiful. Love to hear it. I was telling the audience how we met, going back to the Underground Strength Con, mindset, talking about a little bit about your background. It's great. You're wearing the jiu-jitsu snapback, and kind of what we've been talking about, right? I just want to, if the people don't know, like how you kind of started your journey, and I was saying a little bit of rugby, right?
Oh yeah, lots of rugby in my life. I love it. I don't know now how I played it though. I watch it now and I'm like, man, I would die.
Crazy, for
It
sure.
is crazy.
No, it's awesome though. So, how about the whole like when you were playing rugby, right? Were you just, training yourself, training guys on the team? Like, how'd you get into fitness and strength training?
Well, honestly, like I used to be really fat and obviously this might be a hot take, but really fat people aren't usually very good at sports. So I wanted to be better at rugby and change my life. And I remember seeing a photo of myself at Christmas when I was about 300 pounds with no shirt on, and I thought, oh, gross. So I wanted to change that. And, you know, long story short, man, during that journey, I realized what the human body is capable of and the changes that you can truly make and develop. And I saw my improvements in rugby and how I got better and faster and stronger and more resilient. It was just, I know now that there's no limits. So
No limits, that's for sure. So you're looking at this picture of yourself over the holidays. How old are you when you're ready to make this transformation of fat loss and losing weight? What's what's the timeline like on that?
I was about 20. Um, it was after my first semester at college,
That'll be
and oh yeah, I people talk about the freshman 15, and I had about a freshman 40.
wow.
So I was big into the chunky soup, being cheap, living in college, and thinking chunky soup was great because there's protein. But I grew up and I was always pretty big too. And it doesn't take me long to gain weight. I just gained about 20 pounds in 3 weeks.
Up at,
So
up at work?
yeah, up at camp. Yeah, at work. So yeah, I got home and my wife was like, "Hey, how about you try to get less fat?" And I was like, "All right."
So you have that ability though to lose pretty quickly, and maybe you could talk about those things. I know you're rolling this out with the 6 week and incorporating fasting. Like, how did you start? So, what did you start applying to lose the weight? Like, fast forward a little bit, kind of some of the principles that you used that helped you.
Well, honestly, like when I started, I was doing the whole cut out the fat thing, I would say like the 90s jogging fad of losing weight. And I gained weight.
Yeah,
So, oh man, it was frustrating, obviously. Like fast forward, you know, 6 to 7 to 8 years. I like to tell people like I've kind of figured out my own jacked recipe where I know exactly what I got to eat, where I enjoy it, and it fits my life, and I get lean and jacked, and stay athletic and can still do sports in life. Um, Obviously, everybody's different, but it boils down. The reason I fast, by the way, is because I'm still a fat kid at heart, and I just love eating a lot of food at once.
well,
Um,
I could relate to that for sure, especially as an
yeah.
you know,
Oh.
Gavon. Cafon, yeah, eat everything on Sunday. So, yeah, you got to have these systems in place, right? So we talk about that a lot with clients, like if you overeat or like how to bounce back, basically, because a bad meal isn't a bad day and a bad week, right? So it can't
Yep.
snow this, like it's easy for that to, I'm sure, right? So you figured out ways with your body. So how important would you say for these kids, these athletes, like how to know your body, to know yourself, that
Well,
sort of thing?
dude, I think I actually just was talking to a few of my athletes today, and I just told them like there's a few of them are so good with nutrition, like so good, it's insane. Like it blows me away because they're competing in the national level and they're doing great and they eat good and they enjoy what they eat. But knowing your body, I think, is the most important thing. It's like being able to fix your own car. Um, you know, being able to fix what's broken yourself. But the bottom line is eating a lot of protein, drinking a lot of water, reducing the processed foods, reducing sugars, right?
Mhm.
And that's pretty much it. Like if you say you can't eat beef or or you don't like, I don't know, I have a client that doesn't like eggs and it drives me nuts. We all know how good eggs are, but it
Yeah,
if you have those limitations and you're like, I don't like eggs, but I love chicken thighs. Well, man, hammer the chicken thighs. Like just eat a lot of good natural proteins and it's simple, but the more you pay attention to stuff like that and the more you, let's say, write it down or keep track of it and keep track of your mood, the more you'll learn your body. Like it's not something that's going to happen over a couple of months. It'll probably take a year of doing this where you're like, oh, I really know it. But as an athlete, it's pivotal because I'll put it in perspective. When I was trying to lose weight, I had a lot of trainers, and I think I've mentioned you this before, that were skinny their whole life telling me how to lose weight. And I just would say, like, what do you know about this? Like, how do you know? You've read a book on it, right?
yeah, for sure. I mean, it's theory versus application, right? I mean, you can look at it, a lot of different things, right? But it's one thing to know it, and then there's another thing to do it. The best people have procedural knowledge and declarative knowledge are two different types of knowledge. That's the problem with the higher education system. Uh, like there's a difference between talking about it in theory and practice. Like there's a lot of, Sunday quarterbacking and, Monday morning mat side coaching, right? It's very easy to go in a comment section and drop knowledge. It's another thing to know what it's like to actually be in those environments. So we're all just living off experience. And I think it's interesting you brought up tracking. So like tracking what you're eating. So a big part of what I do with athletes is start having them just track, because just the concept of tracking alone will increase their accountability, because now you're being cognizant of what you're actually doing. And I think this goes into the mindset and the coaching. So just trying to learn, like, for the people that don't know, you're obviously up in Canada. You work with a lot of different athletes. You work with a lot of wrestlers now as well. I was saying a little bit about your jiu-jitsu background. What do you feel like is your, with your experience and knowledge, like your philosophy with coaching, and do you prioritize some movements over others? That sort of thing with your athletes and clients up there.
Oh man, like we could talk about this for hours, right? What we prioritize and stuff, but I'll start with really quick the tracking the food. And it's really easy to um it's really easy to have somebody be like, hey, follow this meal plan, but they might hate it. So what I always do with my athletes first is I just get them to track whatever they're eating. And then I start to make little changes here or there. Like, oh, you're having 2 eggs for breakfast, try to have 4 eggs for breakfast, right? Little changes over time, and then it just becomes their life. It doesn't seem like it's like walking up a staircase. You can't jump up the whole staircase. You got to take it step by step, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep. The other, right?
but dude, as far as movements, I mean, you and I are both old school guys. Like we could live off of it if kids would just if you're like, hey, grab that sandbag and hammer that for hours, that'd be great, right? Zercher squats, any sort of, let's say, functional movement where they're carrying something, picking something up off the ground, like anything like that, like deadlifts or Zercher deadlifts, and overhead presses are great, right? Those big compound movements. You and I talked yesterday about it, and you have people talking about doing all these balance board things where they're throwing balls at the wall, and it's like, yeah, I guess there's an application for that if you want to be good at throwing balls at a wall, but if you want to be good at picking somebody up and throwing them over your head, you should pick something up and throw it over your head.
Right. Absolutely. Got to make it quote unquote functional. And we said that yesterday. We hate that term, but yeah, I mean, you can get. I think that again goes into the practicality, right? So I'll watch a video on here, and there'll be like a ton of bands attached, or you know, the setup. So I think about the setup, right? So practically speaking, if you're a strength coach at the collegiate level or even the private sector, like who has the time to set that up? And you're only with the athletes for so long. Like they're running. I know it's probably the same thing up there. They're running from practice, home, school. A lot of, if there's an adult athlete or just an adult in general, they have a job, right? So I think it's important to also be in like the realistic category. What can my athlete or client actually realistically do based on their scheduling, right? We don't want to like overdo it. I'm never trying to apply something that's going to take away from their recovery, their focus. We should just enhance, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense, man. You want to benefit their life. You don't want to make their whole life around training, because realistically, like me as a strength coach, I don't want them to be focused on strength all the time. I want them to be focused on being a champion in life or their sport, right? And
Yeah.
just try to bump that up a little bit, right?
For Yeah, we want to enhance, not take away. I wanted to get into like mindset, mental toughness, because obviously we talked yesterday about your background with the yoga, breath work, some of those things being, meditation, mindfulness, and how you brought that into this like old school like strength training. Obviously, culture plays a part too. And what I mean by culture is like where you, not only geographically, but what's popular, that sort of thing, right? Because even bringing that here, like maybe if we were on the West Coast, it might be different. But we're here in New York. I'm here in New York. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So it's like a different approach to doing things. You know what I mean? And I want to hear how you kind of integrate that with your wrestlers and stuff.
Well, I think with coaching people one-on-one, right? We talked about this yesterday. Everybody's totally different. You gotta meet them where they're at, see how they're coachable. But when it comes to breath work, mindset, mindfulness, it's insanely important. You know, we can go back to talking about how important it is to know your own body. Well, when you're meditating or doing any sort of breath work or inner work where you're focusing on you and yourself and removing all the outside elements, you're focusing on you alone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, playing rugby for as long as I did, I had countless injuries, right? Countless bumps and bruises. It's a pretty rough sport. And it helped me recover because it helped me really focus my energy. I don't want to get too woo-woo, but on where that injury was happening and where anything like that was happening. And coming back to how that old school approach of breath work and mindfulness plays into, you know, being an absolute savage on the mat or on the field, you focus so much and visualize so much of you just absolutely destroying people that when you go to do that thing, you know that it's fact in your mind. You've convinced yourself, like, I'm an animal. I'm just out here to do what I want.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. The incorporating breath visualization. Yeah, two components. Obviously, people who follow for a long time or have worked directly with me, like this is stuff. These I call them our drills, like or hip heists, or every sport like wrestling has like the penetration steps, right? Shadow wrestling. There's these basic fundamentals. So for mindset, I say, your affirmations, your breathing, your visualization. These are our sprawls. These are our reps. These are our. This is an everyday, all the time thing we need to be doing. And just like you wouldn't go to practice one time and think it's going to pay off, you're not going to do one day of breath work and then not do it for 2 weeks and see a result, right? So I like to think of the mind just like the body, in the sense that we need as Coach Evanesh loves to talk about, consistency. You need the consistency factor. It's not magic. I'm not selling you a formula. It's like anything. It has to be consistent and repeatable over periods of time to see results. Does that?
Dude, definitely. Consistency is the number one. We can both agree on that. You want to talk about how to become a champion, is be consistent at doing champion things, right?
100%. Consistency is like a big theme that I discuss with the athletes, because when you look at the best programs, you know, it could be any sport. We could talk about, obviously, hockey's popular up there, rugby, in different parts of the world, right? Because I still keep tabs on other sports and what's popular. But you look at Penn State wrestling, Iowa wrestling, Alabama football, Duke basketball.
Dominant.
Consistency is the name.
Yep.
And consistency actually starts, I think a lot of kids sleep on the importance of, like, or even fighters, really, like a pre-fight routine or a pre-match routine. You can't throw spaghetti at the wall hoping it sticks. I know you like that reference, but we might have to add that to Forget About It Friday. But you can't just start like, one day for this fight, I'm going to do this warm up, and then I'm going to do that one, and then, I'm going to try this move in the fight. You didn't practice. I'd say fight, but it could be a match, whatever, a game. You're not going to run a drill. You're not going to run a power I formation, and if you guys never ran the drill in football practice, kids, but you'll
Exactly.
stuff they'll do when you're dealing with real athletes and real clientele. Or you might even have, if you're someone who's listening, might be with a general like population client, they might just be like, I'm going to try this food. And it's like, have you ever tried this food before? We're just,
Yeah, I want to try keto or something. It's like, well, maybe don't try it 2 weeks before nationals,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think it's interesting, your journey with like the low carb. You kind of mentioned that earlier. I think there's been a lot of demonization of the carbs too, and they're still necessary, and glucose is still the primary energy source. But the keto diet is definitely unpopular, and it's definitely effective. But again, people will like argue about this, but they're still not getting 8 hours of sleep at night.
Dude, I know. And I'm one who doesn't get 8 hours of sleep a night. I'm
You know.
notorious for not sleeping. Like, I know. And if I was still competing all the time in rugby, I wouldn't be eating. I eat like basically an anabolic diet. Other reasons for that, like I've had a ton of concussions. It's really good at post concussions, right? So that's why I eat like that. A lot of the carbs that I eat come from fruit because I love fruit. I don't really eat a whole lot of vegetables, right? But this comes from 10, 12, 15 years of experimenting and learning what my body responds to. So a lot of kids will just hop on stuff. Meanwhile, a lot of my youth athletes, you know what wrestlers are like? All they want to do is stay skinny.
Hmm.
It's
I
hard
know.
to get them to eat anything.
We eat similar, but I think that the reason I eat that way is exactly what you're saying. It's realistic. Obviously, I'm an adult and I'm not competing anymore. Where if I was, I would, my approach would be different, right? Because you're obviously depleting your glycogen levels, not to nerd out on here, but
Oh
you
yeah.
need to replace. But I get what you're saying. The ketones, like, yeah, it's really good for a lot of research is coming out. Even creatine is very good for like cognitive and stuff. And, if you've had, yeah, that's your thing, right? Oh, so I had an athlete. We were talking about that actually recently. Like, it's funny that they demonize creatine when that's like the most researched supplement out there. Like, when I took classes in school, like even 10, 15 years ago, like even then, they would nutrition classes. They'd be like, creatine is highly researched. Here's the data. Write a paper on it. This is before the chat GPT, right?
Yeah.
You'd actually have to, look at this stuff. But yeah, you're a big component of that, right? Creatine.
Oh, I'm a huge man. I've been taking creatine pretty much every day since I was probably 17 years old, so almost 20 years. And I, I'll never forget. So I moved down to, and I've had quite a few concussions and bangs in the head, right?
Very
And
common in wrestling.
it's
I want you to talk
to,
about this. This is
oh,
good.
it's so there's been more studies for creatine for brain health than anything else. And I noticed it firsthand. I moved down to Mexico for a few months with my wife, and I couldn't get my hands on creatine for a couple weeks. And she looked at me one day and was like, "You are an idiot.
So
You are foggy."
it, that brain fog, it's like a
Yeah.
neurotropic essentially in some ways. It's just like very similar to caffeine, or is it better?
Oh, I would say creatine's better. It's not something that's an instant relief, right? But it's something that I take it every day. I take, I don't know, 15 to 20 grams a
Yeah,
day. I'm
yeah,
also 210 pounds, right?
yeah.
So, but dude, it's like night and day. If I don't take it, probably a week later, I can't focus as well. I'm really having a hard time, putting my sentences together properly. Um, it really, I can't stress enough. All of my clients, I get them to take creatine. That's the only supplement I ever recommend because, like you said, it's the most researched supplement. People will say protein is the most. Protein, the macronutrient, is the most, but protein powder is not the most researched supplement.
Yeah, like
Like we all know protein's important, but protein powder, you can go either way with it. It can be it's not as bioavailable. I tell my clients all the time, like, hey, remember, this is ultra processed food. Like,
right,
it's not
right.
real food you're eating. It's a powdered drink supplement.
Is we're talking about the supplements, and obviously you've seen that's another one where they like told everyone you needed to load with it. Again, it's just consistency is a big thing, and obviously your kids need to be aware of it if they're like managing weight and that sort of thing too, because you do need to drink more water, right?
Yep.
And you also do yeah, you definitely need to like hydrate, but you don't need to load creatine. There's this like the loading, remember that was like a big thing.
Yeah, I still try to keep up with what people are talking about with creatine, even though I'm pretty old school and all of my nutrition knowledge pretty much comes from like Marty Gallagher and Brooks Cubic. But I like to think you can load it if you want to. Like it's not going to kill you, it's not going to hurt you. But if you just consistently do it, it's like the opposite of when people say, "I want to do a detox." Well, why don't you just eat clean all the time, and then you don't have to detox? You
Right.
know, And-
Why get out of why do people allow themselves to get out of shape and then like start the cycle, right? You said it before, like wrestlers want to stay skinny, but sometimes they do the opposite, like they blow up, especially here. I don't know what the culture is up there where it may be different, weight cutting, weight management with combat athletes. I don't know. But here it's like big on cutting still. Um, and doing it not only that, but doing it improperly. So like managing weight improperly. So you're dehydrated, you don't have any fuel. Like obviously, yeah. What are the thoughts going on up there in Canada? How is the approach to that?
well, I'm not a wrestling coach, so as a strength coach, my beliefs on weight cutting are totally different than
Uh,
old school wrestling coaches.
yeah, no, it's cool. I wanted you to
Yeah.
get your that's that's fine.
Um,
Or-
so I know that the athletes that I train do a lot of old school cutting, right? They'll cut weight however they got to cut weight. They won't eat for a whole day. They'll do all that. But in my mind, I'm like, well, listen, if you are lean and super strong and jacked all the time, terrific, right? Like what's the harm in that? I remember I was watching a video the other day and a woman who's a strength coach was talking. She said, I just started training wrestlers and I just don't get why they need to cut from 170 to 155. Why don't you just compete at 170?
for sure.
And I get it, right? You're trying to get every advantage you want, and it's very ingrained. I don't think weight cutting is super healthy. I've done it myself for jiu-jitsu tournaments, and it sucks. It's very different in jiu-jitsu. You normally have to weigh yourself right before you compete, so awful. You don't have that day of like eating food again. But yeah, I don't really think personally, I don't think weight cutting is super healthy, but I know it's part of the sport, and it's unless the sport changes the rules, it won't change, right? So, and I'm not recommending that they change the rules for it. I think the sport of wrestling is very good. Like I love wrestling. Um, but a lot of my athletes are lean already. Like they're only cutting 5 pounds. You know, they're not, I know you've probably seen some crazy cuts. You've probably done some crazy cuts in your day. And
Definitely.
it kills you. Like,
Yeah, it really a lot of performance. So the way I look at it is more from obviously the mindset perspective now, where I'm at in my coaching career, and kind of like so I actually have a video on here where I talk about weight cutting. It's called "Weight Cutting Sucks." Why weight cutting sucks for most people, and basically, unless you're like an elite level wrestler and you're trying to get to this certain weight class, you probably there makes no benefit for you to go down when you still can't shoot properly or sprawl properly or put your body in a biomechanical position correctly from a skill standpoint. So before we can even talk about that, but the mindset thing, I'll keep it real, is like, if you're looking like Rocky in Rocky 2, you got the sweat gear on. First of all, does anyone ever wrestle a match in the Rocky 2 sweat jumpsuit when he's in Philly, he's running around? Even this, you know, this is not, is this simulate competition, what I'm wearing, even for in this video? No.
no.
So how is this preparing me for battle more? Even though I'll tell clients, like, it's not war, it's not battle, like it's just a match, right? Like we need to actually, it's paradoxes can exist, that sort of thing. But so the whole lead up is not preparing you, because I'm more of a coach who recommends like the singlet, the headgear, what you're actually going to, wear, right? Because we want to simulate competition through the week. Because what happens is make the match or the tournament into this big thing, and it just literally starts with how you practice. If I don't even, it could be done in jiu-jitsu too. I mean, if you're not doing live rounds with the scoring system, if you're training for like an IBJJF or a NAGA or an AC, you got to know the rules. You got to kind of tailor it, customize it to what the scoring set is, right? Submission only, submission attempt, right? You've done these, I'm sure, like,
Yep.
because that's more of your experience. So I'd love for you to talk about that. But my point is that, if you're so worried about beating the scale, how the heck are you going to worry about beating your opponent or getting better?
Yeah. You know what, honestly, I think in a preparation standpoint, like obviously training and the same stuff you're going to compete in, super important, right? I think that's super important. Not everybody's Loudon Swain running around in a sweatsuit all the time, right? But um, with the keeping your mind in it, I think having a habit of the like this is my tournament, it's tournament week, right? Say if I'm a wrestler and I know that I'm gonna cut weight, just make it a thing, like make it a normal thing. Like, oh, this is my diet all week, and I know if I follow that, it's gonna lead me into a weight cut without it being, Thursday night, oh, I gotta stop. I gotta only eat ice now, right? And you're starting to stress out and you're starting to focus on this stuff because, like I said, I don't think it's ever gonna come out of wrestling. or combat sports, the weight cutting is a thing. Um, but when it comes to like jujitsu, for me, I'm like, I don't care if it's a points, IBJJF system or a submission only. I want to get a submission within the first minute. Right? That's my mindset. I want to end it. I'm hunting for that. That's what I want all the time. And I remember when I first started jiu-jitsu, one of my mentors, I went and watched him compete. He was awesome black belt. And he subbed all of his opponents and he said, see, points don't matter.
I
You know?
Yes, I get what you're saying. You're talking more if in terms of wrestling, like let's not forget that the point of this is to pin.
Exactly.
I get
Yep.
that. So yeah, sometimes. So yeah, I think that as a coach, we're talking about this now is you want to still emphasize pinning. Pinning is important. Pinning has gone away. You see a
Oh,
lot more teching now. I think it's important to teach guys cradles and like finishing moves, like to teach them wrestling position. So the whole point of the game is to pin the guy. So yeah, the whole thing of jiu-jitsu is to submit the guy. So yes, but I've noticed though, for some people, for some athletes, like that won't work for them in the sense how it works for you because now they're focused on the outcome. So they'll lose all the steps that take you to get there. So maybe you could talk about stuff that helps you stay present in the moment, focused on your game plan when you competed, Dylan.
well, because I have done a ton of inner work and I do a lot of breath work and mindfulness, right? It's all about the way that I am coached is different than other people might be, but for myself, it's all about the process, right? So in jujitsu, I'm focusing on the position before the submission, right? I'm not thinking about the points. I'm not thinking about anything. All I'm thinking about is my position. And if I get a good position, I'm looking for the submission and keep it as simple as possible. And I think in wrestling, like if you're thinking about points and you're constantly if you're doing this and looking at the score and looking at the time all the time, and you see it all the time. I see it in the videos of my clients doing that. I'm like, what? Like,
We
pay
go.
attention.
Yeah, that's a bad one. That's a no-no. That's yeah. So you noticed that, right? The
Oh,
focus.
dude.
Yeah,
It's
there's it's bad, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So you let me get. So you think that there's a correlation? There's definitely a correlation, but because of the lack of the inner work, and when you refer to the word inner work, it's like the mindfulness, meditation, the breathing, the yoga stuff. The athletes are losing focus.
Oh,
That's
definitely. I had a good conversation with my buddy James about this last night too, after we spoke. And he trains football players. And basically, I focus so much on myself. And when you're doing inner work and breath work, you learn to control your thoughts and control your emotions. And, I have the shirt, the old Rocky or old Rambo saying, your mind is the best weapon, basically. And it is because that's like having a Ferrari with nobody knows how to drive it, you
just
know?
sits in the garage. Sits in.
Exactly. Or you take it out and drive 50 around the block a few times. Like nobody knows how to drive this racing machine. So if you're spending all this time making this killer weapon in your body, but you don't really know how to control it with your mind, it's not worth it. So if you're going into a match and you're emotional because, you got dumped or you're an adult and you got somebody yelled at you at work or something, you're going to be thinking about that. Where really, when I go into a match, I'm thinking about what position can I get? Number one. That's all I'm thinking about, right? And that's what I think a lot of people. It's easy to say, but it's really hard. You talk about there's a term in say mindfulness where you treat your thoughts as clouds. You notice them, but you know they'll pass. So you don't focus on the cloud. You just stare at the sky.
This is excellent. Yeah, I tell the guys to not have a battle with their own thoughts. You can't fight your thoughts head on. You have to accept them, reframe them, and move on. So we'll actually go through the cognitive framework. I will sit there with the athlete, with the client, and explain to them how to reframe. And you obviously are aware of all this because you've done it for yourself and with your athletes. But yeah, I'll actually sit there and teach them exactly what you're talking about. Another analogy I like to use is like, you know, hey Jimmy, remember when you were a little kid and maybe you were snuck in your brother's room and you watched a bad scene or a bad movie and it scared you, but then you grow up and you learn to think that's a bad dream. Well, that's how we have to categorize our thoughts, right? Because our whip voice, or our sissy voice, our inner voice that tells us to slow down or stop is not us. It's our ego. And one of the things, this is very advanced. This is not day one, week one, month one.
No.
I have them start to label it and separate. And on the contrary, one of the things I do with more of the elite guys is have them start coming up with like, their Dillon Strength or their Coach Coco, their persona, and trying to go into that, into battle, into competition, because I'm trying to get them to stop thinking about this is like win or lose, like life or death, but this is a performance, and that's really how we jump levels, is looking at every match as a performance. It's not like this isn't Tokyo Olympics here. Like it's just another day at the office. Let's see what we can do to get better. But yeah, we're definitely on the same wavelength with this stuff and the same page. It's just the way you've learned it and the way we've reframed it, right? It's funny, but it's very true. So you think so? The thought pattern is huge for you,
Oh,
Mitch.
big time. Like, so I'll give you a really quick exercise, actually, that I think would be really good for athletes if there's anybody that's going to see this. So you do the box breathing, right, with your athletes?
Yeah, definitely. Box breathing.
And you go in 4 seconds, hold for 7, and let out 8, whatever. You could do 4, 4, 4, 4. Any sort of
4, 8, 7.
consistent
I
breathing.
switch it up. Like I try to, right? Switch variety.
Oh yeah. So I'll let you. I want you to try this sometime too. So
Listen,
set a timer for like 10 minutes. Set your phone down. Set it for 10 minutes, 15 seconds, so you get a little 15 seconds to kind of get ready. Sit comfortably. You can light a candle or even put a dot on the wall, right? Somewhere blank. And you're going to do the box breathing with your eyes open. And I want you to focus on that flame of the candle or the dot on the wall while you're breathing for that 10 minutes. So when you have a thought come in your mind that says, oh man, I got to get milk at the grocery store, you recognize that thought and you just let it go, right? You don't try to shove it down. You don't try to slam the door on any thoughts, because if you try to slam the door on any thoughts, it's just going to keep banging on the door until you let it in. So you recognize it. Hello, thought. Let it go, but focus on that flame, focus on that dot. And what that trains your mind to do is focus on what's happening and what it needs to deal with at the time. While you're doing that breathing, it's going to put your body in a different state where, you'll be able to breathe calmly in a match. You won't get that like, breathing where you start to panic. You can control your breathing, and then you can control your mind. And that sort of focus, I think, is absolutely pivotal when you're doing anything like that. Because if you go into a match, right, if you're a wrestler, and we talked about it last night, how many of your kids go on track and say, this guy's 92-1, and, I'm going to be number 2. I'm going to be 93, right?
boo. Yeah, they all
And
do.
they'll think about that during the match or before the match or whatever, where actually one of my athletes, this is a really good little story, talking about weight cutting. He went to a tournament, maybe 2 months ago. They go every weekend, basically, what wrestlers are like. But a kid had cut weight to get into his division, thinking it would be a cakewalk, right? And I remember watching the video thinking, this guy is jacked. Like, this kid he's thick, like he looks like a jacked wrestler. And my guy beat him. And I think it's because he's so focused on what he has to do in the match. And this guy was probably so focused on cutting weight. And the whole time he's in that match, he's focused on being tired. And those are other things too. Like, you're going to be sore. You're going to be tired. You're going to be upset because you just got a point scored on you. You're going to be upset because you almost got pinned and you're fighting for your life. But if you learn to focus on what you have to do and not what else is happening or what else your brain is telling you to do, you're almost unstoppable. Like, if you believe fully that you can focus on this one thing, no problem. It's going to be the easiest thing in the world. And I think that more athletes realize that, the better they're going to be, right? Everybody can do bench press. Everybody can do push-ups. Everybody can squat. Everybody can do, drills. Everybody can do wrestling 5 days a week. And, but if your mind is stronger than your opponent's mind, you will 100%, I would say 99% of the time, you'll win that match.
Definitely. Yeah, you brought up a lot of different things there. From the last part, you're talking about controlling the controllables. You see the explosion in stoicism and different things. Really, it's just us locking in our internal locus of control. What can I control? What's outside of my control? So I don't know if you remember Coach Armstrong, like Billy's speech or his philosophy at the end of the
Oh,
under.
he was awesome.
So something that really resonates with me, there's a lot because I'm a sport coach, but he does a lot of acronyms. So I use a lot of acronyms too with coaching because, again, I can't get into the whole thing. It's like drinking out of a fire hose, right? So these kids, athletes now, the attention span is here and gone tomorrow. So we need to give them something they can kind of chew on, right? So one of them is AEA, attitude, effort, aggressiveness, AEA. That's my control. That's exactly what you're talking about. So see how we speak like this, and obviously we're in our 30s, like we can handle. But I need to tell them AEA and like go out there, right? This is like practical coaching, or when I'm doing a mindset coaching workshop. So that's one of them. But another one that stood out to me was when you were talking about that athlete who looked at the clock, right? Like
All of them.
he needs to be instructed to only do that when end of the period or like a break between periods. I know it's freestyle up there, so it's 1 3 minute, 1 3 minute. We don't do that here. This is folk style, so it's 2 2 2.
I know.
But the periods is where you look at the and another one I use with kids is STP, score time position. STP. What's the score? What's the time? What's the position? So then you don't make a mistake. I'm sure you've been at tournaments. Kids on top winning, lets the guy up without realizing it. Now they go into overtime. He gets taken down. He loses the match because we weren't focused. You didn't know again, it's incorporating all the stuff you kind of had mentioned. So, locking in the controllables. That breathing exercise was fantastic. I mean, that should be a big thing that people can get a lot out of. Not being distracted, just putting away the technology and being in the moment. I think that's why we all love jiu-jitsu and wrestling, right? Is that it's like the one time where we're just worried about the man in front of us, and we can't really be caring about going to get a gallon of milk or paying our cell phone bill. You're just worried about somebody choking you out
Yep.
but right?
Oh, man.
Moment. It's like, how could you complain about anything at that point?
You know what? A really good black belt buddy of mine, he told me once, he's like, I love jiu-jitsu because it's the same as riding a motorcycle. If I'm thinking about anything else, I'm probably going to die.
That's a perfect. That's well said. Yes, exactly. I think that, and that's what attracts, one of the many things that attracts people, and they love about it. And they're like, even if they're a black belt or a white belt. I guess, Mitch, as we wrap things up, like, how do you keep that, like, white belt mentality, right? And like, who are some of your biggest influences as a coach? That sort of thing. With this, even if it's the breath work, just like who has influenced you with this stuff? Because you have a different perspective than a lot of strength coaches,
Oh,
fitness,
yeah. Well,
wrestling.
honestly, dude, biggest influence as a coach has got to be, I'm going to say Zed, but Evanesh, like I've talked to him for years and years and years, and he's done I can't say enough. He's done a lot for our community, keeping it old school. He's the commissioner of strength for a reason, right?
They got to board. They got to put him on the American Association, the phys ed board or something.
No, that guy needs his own award.
Presidential challenge, the Zach challenge. They got to create in phys ed in schools, right?
I would love that. I can't have any vote for that being up in Canada, but I swear if you guys do that down in the States, I'd be so pumped about that. Like he's amazing. Like the way that he coaches and his authenticity is so is so welcome. And that was one of the biggest things that I got from the Strength Con when I met all of you guys. And like everyone's so authentic. Everyone's a real human being that wants to just help people out. And passion is the biggest one. I just want to say about Billy though, like Coach Armstrong, man, when you mention his name, I got goosebumps because I got him now. Look, I don't know if you can see, but I just got him
He
again,
was the
saying it
only,
again.
that's the only time I spoke at the whole convention, I think. I asked him a question about culture and like culture building and team building because I really liked, because again, in that type of environment, like I'm trying to listen more than I'm talking and I'm just trying to like be the sponge and absorb because, when you're around some of these guys, it's like, this is really great stuff. So, it's easy to like, you know, I just wanted to absorb everything. So yeah, he stuck out to me though, for sure. For sure.
Oh,
I have
dude,
here.
he's a
We'll link him.
coach's coach. Like,
Yeah, like there's like everybody, your athlete's favorite athlete or your coach's favorite. Yeah, he's that guy for sure.
oh, dude, it blew my mind. Like that was,
Zach is the man. I mean, that's really. I started following Zach on his Elite FTS articles. So like we've talked about this too. Like the way it is now, if you're an athlete, you have access to so much information. Like there's flow grappling, flow wrestling. I was popping in the VHS of John Smith, like Coach Gable, right? Like you couldn't really find technique. There wasn't matches out. I mean, it was almost like an urban legend if you trained this type of like
oh,
wrestling. You didn't really have this type of thing, and we're not old. It's just it evolved so rapidly. So anyway,
dude.
that's how I found Coach on Elite FTS in the articles that he would post in like '03, '04, '05, whatever.
Oh yeah, man. I remember his YouTube videos. Like, I I would find those YouTube videos, him and DeFranco, right? I remember getting DeFranco's DVD Strong, right? That was so cool seeing those guys just doing change drugs and pushing the sleds and
Yeah,
all that stuff. I was so fired up, and being up in like I'm from rural Ontario in Canada, and it's like I didn't have influences like that around me, right? And my brother was a huge influence on me. He was all about getting strong and jacked. He's older than me, and he's still way stronger and way jackeder than I am. And I like getting those DVDs was so cool. I played rugby, and rugby's kind of a niche sport as well, where you don't have a whole lot of influence, but I had a lot of great mentors in the sport. Um, I just want to give a shout out to my influences: Zach, Ross Enemat, and Elliot Holtz. Like, dude, those guys reading their forums, making sandbags off of RossTraining.com. Like, that was my early years of working out, and it was so cool. But when it comes to mindfulness, that was a totally different avenue. I remember when I was in high school, I went to the local like rec center where I worked out, and I did yoga, and I just remember this feeling that I got. Oh, this is different, right? And the more like my buddy and I, we loved football and rugby, and we would go to yoga, and we were these fat high school guys going to yoga, like not typical people you'd see there or you'd think you'd see. And oh, I read an article in like an old Muscle and Fitness or magazine about some NFL player doing yoga, and I thought that was so cool. But in my journey, like totally different realm, right? It's a totally different realm than the strength world.
night and day.
But just it's like it's literally like yin and yang, like it's totally different. But it just the way that I felt and I learned in that world, I saw the immediate benefits in not only the rest of my life, but in sports in general. Your visual, like when I was playing rugby, I was doing breath work and yoga all the time. Learning to calm my nervous system down. One of the biggest things, I could talk forever, and you know that, but one of the biggest things was, I learned that stress on your body, be it from an injury or from someone cutting you off in traffic, is stress on your body. Like your body's going to recognize it the same way. So I was really big when I was playing rugby all the time to reduce the stress in my life, be it through nutrition or through mindfulness and staying calm all the time, because I realized like this is my recovery time. When I'm not training, when I'm not playing a game or in a match or anything, it's time to recover. And I'm big on nervous system efficiency with the training that I do with athletes. I think it's super important, and I talk about it all the time with them. But that recovery on your nervous system has nothing to do with cold tubs, has nothing to do with, taking protein shakes, and it all has to do with your mind because you're stressed out. Your nervous system's stressed out, and you got to calm that down. Um, so as for mentors in that world, my wife has been a huge impact on me. She's a very spiritual person, and she's shown me so much, and the growth since I met her has been incredible. But you can see the books behind me. It goes Schwarzenegger, Marty Gallagher, Big Zed right here, and then over here, all like all spiritual books, right? Like old Buddhist books and old yogi books, right? Because you learn lessons from everything. I think open-mindedness for an athlete is very important, and like trusting your instinct, because you coach somebody and they do really well with breath work, and they need to calm it down in training a little bit. And some people are like, I just want to burn it to the ground, and they excel with that, right?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I usually try to identify that in the type of athlete. Like, some people are more, I'll just make it more sympathetic. Some people are more parasympathetic. For the listener, more hyped up, more chill. So finding that zone, that zen, that locked in, right? I shared this a lot. It's called the inverted U. It's from sports psychology. It's finding that zone
Oh,
in the middle.
I saw that.
So a lot of some athletes come out more flat, right? So I may do some more like neural charge stuff, exciting the CNS. You'll like this because it's strength and
Oh
conditioning
yeah.
time. They need more jumps. They need more up downs. They need some sprints. They might need to hit a live go. Some other guys, they're like, it's like listening to Enter the Sandman, right? They're like Terminator. So they will need Coach Mitch's breath work. They will need maybe some light static stretching. Let's bring you down. But everybody, you're right. Every athlete is different. So what might work for Jim isn't going to work for John. So I think one of the biggest things, in my opinion, that's missing from coaching, and I'm talking about my realm, obviously, is like individualization. And because it's really hard, and it's also not always practical if you're one coach with 50 guys, but that's really what we've been able to do with our program, is really help athletes on a one-to-one or like the small group basis, where I really figure out what makes Mitch tick, because
Yeah.
it's a difference maker, where we can give generalized advice, do posterior chain, do the breath work, but somebody might just be needing to learn how to be more aggressive, or another person might be struggling with imposter syndrome. So it can't say on a video, and it's like people hate that answer, right? But I don't really know, and we don't really know until you talk to them, right? And you assess and figure out where they're at. And I like what you said earlier, just, meeting athletes where they're at. So obviously, I'm not going to give away your exact age, but where you're at in life, where you've been, you've obviously traveled a lot. We didn't even get a chance to talk to that. What would be like one piece of advice you'd give a 23-year-old coach right out of university? I use, right? You guys call it university up there, university, or just maybe they're on the rugby field. Like, what do you wish you knew at that age, like early, that formidable time, Mitch?
Oh man, I honestly that there's like nothing is impossible, right? Um, anything you can make anything work. I was talking to a young guy yesterday, literally at the gym, who's 23 years old, and he's a stone carver, and he's like, "Oh, I would love to do this, for a living." He's a mason, really, but he wants to be a stone carver. And I said, "Dude, go." He wants to go to Scotland. I said, go there, experience it, meet people, talk to people, get out there, right? The biggest advice I could give anybody is just to go do it. Like, it's going to be scary, right? Everything new is scary. It's scary for me to eat salad, right?
Right.
I hate it and I don't want to do it ever, but I do it sometimes because you have to. But things are scary, right? So when you're starting out, nothing is impossible. Like nothing is impossible. You know what? Actually, I'll relate it because you like things like this. So recently, I don't know if you watch the NFL, but Micah Parsons, amazing football player, got drafted by the
Mhm.
Giants, and said he reached out to Lawrence Taylor. I know you know Lawrence Taylor, the man, LT. He said, "Hey, I want to wear your number. Is that okay?" And he said, "No, it's not okay." And Lawrence Taylor said, "You get your own number and you make it great."
Yes, sir. I love that. Yeah, Micah Parsons went to Penn State, right? He was big with the wrestling, and he supported
Oh
the
yeah.
by some of the team. He would always be at the matches, tweeting about it, and that's really cool because obviously he has a different audience and fan base, so you could tell he paid homage to like his wrestling roots. So I respect that, right? I'm not a huge NFL guy myself, but I still keep my tabs on my Giants.
Oh
When I
yeah.
was young, I really liked them, like back in the day. Um, Not as much anymore, but that's obviously a conversation for another time. I like how you brought up getting outside your comfort zone and no limits, no limits, no limits. You said like don't place any arbitrary limits on yourself and go outside your comfort zone. One thing I wish I would have done earlier. It wasn't until I met my wife, or really when I was done being a competitor, I didn't travel. I didn't. I mean, are you surprised? It was like lock-in mode. I didn't really do that stuff until I was older, right? And waited till I had money and these things and the boxes were checked to do those types of things more frequently than not. But again, it's you can't really turn back the clock. Everything happens for a reason. You learn through those times. So I'm happy, you know, I had a different experience in that sense, but I think it's valuable. I had a kid I was mentoring about this sort of thing. Told him the same thing, like go work there for a year, see it, live it, and then you know what you don't want. And 9 times out of 10, you come back, or you can't put a price on perspective. And we can't teach it to you, and we can't give it to you. You have to experience it, right? Perspective.
Exactly.
So
Man,
that's a
experiencing things in person is so important. You mentioned traveling. I don't want to cut you off at all, but dude, if I could recommend anything to any young person, travel, like
but out no,
outside of North
yeah,
America,
yes, outside, like
experience the
you said,
world.
outside your culture, outside your norm, and not in like the hippy dippy way, but like to live, breathe, and understand things from a new, like I said, perspective, and to realize that's when you start to see the no limits, right? So you need to, and the more of it you can do, the better. And the better time to do it is actually when you're young, contrary to like waiting until this perfect time. Do it on a budget, work, be a student. Obviously, this is a strength and conditioning. Like we're popping in on coaching, but yes, because it's funny that something like that can make you a better athlete because now you have better perspective. So then when you go back, you have a new sense of gratitude and renewal for this thing that you're doing: rugby, wrestling, football, etc.
Man, I think traveling is a really good way for people to discover themselves. And the more you know yourself, the more authentic you can be in your life, be it in your sport, as a coach, as a partner to your spouse, as anything. And I think traveling for young people is super, super important. Like, just go do it, figure it out. I came to the Strength Con and I wanted to go so bad. And I'll be honest with you, man. I know you know this, but like I was not in the best state to go. Like I had to make it happen, and I made it happen. I just said, I'm going to this. I don't care. And like I'm 36, and I was very blue collar my whole life. I still am. I was work, work, work all the time, and I regret not traveling when I'm young. But you know what? Now I have these insane skills. Whatever. It is what it is. But if I traveled when I was young, any experience is going to make you a different person. But I really, kids travel like is so important. And talk about sports, like the club that I work with a lot here, they travel to Japan once a year. They do a Japan tour, and as you know, Japanese wrestling is insane. Like they are so good, and these kids get so much experience from that. I don't know if you've been to Japan, but man, what a different culture. I love it there. Like it's so cool. And for kids that young to experience something so different, you start to realize that there aren't monsters on the mat. We're all human beings, right? There's not monsters in life. You're all human beings, right? And the kids, it starts to almost like humble you and make you realize that the world is not as big as you make it out to be. Problems in life aren't as big as you think they are. They're only as big as you let them become. But yeah, dude, advice to young people: travel, have no limits. Like I lost like 100 pounds, and that was my anything. I now know anything is possible moment, right? Once I did that, I was like, anything's possible. Do I want to bench 350, 400 pounds? I know I could do it. I just have to do it. I just have to work at it. Like anything is possible whatsoever. And the more young people realize that, the the better they're going to become at a young age. And you know that, man. I know you've done some crazy things in your life, and you've built this amazing business, right? And when you were coming out of school, were you like, hey, I'm going to have this amazing coaching business? You were probably like, I got to go get a job. I got to go do my thing. Until you started to do it, you're like, this is real. This is possible. I can do this. And not only that, I love it.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that people, you said it earlier, passion, right? You have to follow your passion, and, you have to not take no for an answer, and you have to have like a burning desire, a vision, and you have to be able to really, do things for free for a long time, or would do something for 12 hours, 16 hours a day. It's all you care about. It's all you think about. Eat, sleep, and breathe the mission. And the mission is not a sacrifice. The mission is a choice, because on the other side of it is great things. It's funny though, you bring up the coaching. Like, I use more for my degree now than I would have prior in different positions and roles. I'm not going to get into. We'll talk about this another time, but it's just funny how life works. It's like it's interesting. Everything comes uh, full circle. So no, I love that though. No limits and travel. Yeah, definitely two huge things for all young people to take away. And you know, we'll definitely have to do this
Oh,
again though, Mitch. This was,
brother, for sure,
I think
man.
people will get a lot out of your journey, kind of how we met, and just hearing your, like, losing 100 pounds, not putting limits on yourself. I think that people will get a lot out of that. And yeah, the gym is a metaphor for life. That weight loss journey is a metaphor for life. Wrestling is a metaphor for life. Like, if it was me, like, God chose me to do wrestling, right? It could have been something else. It could have been coaching basketball. It could have been a pizza shop. I don't know. It could have been a car detailing. The point is that for me, I don't look. Yes, I view it as a sport, like from an X's and O's standpoint, but really, it's just a vehicle to help people, transform them. So it could have been another. It could have been nutrition. It could have been a different avenue. But for me, it was wrestling. So it's just one of the ways that helps get us to our destination. It's just a tool. That's how I,
Exactly, man.
just a tool. It's just a metaphor. Um, and that's why I'm so adamant about this, because if all you get out of wrestling is the wins and the losses, or like a double leg, like, you kind of missed the whole point of this, right? If all you got was how to do bench press, keep your elbows tucked and arch your back and, retract your scapula, you kind of missed the whole. Yes, of course. Yes, get great tech. Yes, I'm not undermining technique or skill, but I'm saying is that there's more to it than that. Would you agree? How do you feel about that?
Dude, I 100% agree. I'll relate it to the trades. Like, as you know a lot of tradespeople. There's a lot of really skilled tradespeople out there, and there's a lot that aren't. Oh, I love it.
Crazy. I don't know how that happened.
Keep it. I love it. You need to get that tattooed.
It's hysterical.
But like, there's bro, there's people that learn in school and they know the theory, but there's other people that can do it. And you don't learn how to do something by reading about it, right? You don't learn how to do something in school. Like you said, you just started practicing a lot of the stuff you learned in school now.
Yep.
And it's like when you finish school, you're probably like, what a waste of all that. Like, and I went to school for architecture, and I worked in it for a couple of years until I realized I hated sitting at a desk. but I'll tell you what, I'm I'm a great builder, and I use the same concepts from that and all of the, building knowledge that I have in building people. It's all, to me, it's all about concepts and just experience of doing it. Like I could have gone to school to be a carpenter, and the day I graduate, I would suck, and no one would hire me. But if you met a carpenter that's 50 years old and they've been doing it for 30 years, you're like, they're probably awesome because they've been doing it, right? When you started coaching, I'm sure you were awesome, but you're probably way better now.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. For sure. I get what you mean. That's why you have to have mastery. You have to have experience. You have to have perspective. We talked about that prior. I think I definitely was always into this. I was always into coaching. Obviously, it's what I went to school for, but my outlook and my approach has changed drastically, right? And I was exposed to obviously a lot of good coaches, but you cannot replace time in the perfect now, because like in Rocky, there's no tomorrow, because tomorrow doesn't exist and neither does the past. So you got to take advantage of every moment you have and try to learn as you go and not worry about being perfect. That's what I was saying before. Like we put the cat thing on. Like I was talking in the thing, like prior to you jumping on, I was like, I'll post every single day. Like I was saying, I'm not worried about the perfect lighting or the perfect edit or any of that. My mission is the mission. The mission is to get the information out, is to help as many people as I can, whether that's in 5 pixel or 5G, 3G. It doesn't really matter. So I
Oh,
always keep that, because it's easy to minor in the major in the minor. So I was telling, just like if they were listening, like, that's a good thing. Just do it, rip it, like let it rip.
dude, that's exactly the tell the young person what to do. Just do it, right?
Yeah,
I tell all my young family members, like, start a business. Oh, but it's hard. It's not hard. It costs $50. It costs $50 to register a business. Just start it. I started my first business. I had no idea what I was doing.
yeah.
And you learn real quick.
I'm a big believer
And
in throwing yourself into the fire and just getting your
dude,
wet, and that's helped me a lot. But I've learned more than I haven't from doing it that way, I think. One thing I'm working on personally, like, is to become more of a tactician or a strategist, if that makes sense. Because
oh yeah.
but I just like to share that, just to be like transparent. It's because I'm not perfect. I don't sit here and pretend like I do everything right. I just have an idea, and I know it works in certain situations. Not in every situation, though.
Well, but the thing is, like, thanks for sharing that. And you don't know anything is really going to work, right, until you do it.
You
Like,
have to. So
it's you have to do stuff all the time. You have to try things. Um, oh man, I had something in my mind, but I'm an idiot, so I totally forgot. There's me being transparent. I'm actually stupid, but
you need to take
I'm
more
just a meathead.
creatine. Not enough.
I need.
That's what it was. Now we'll wrap up here. I think for the people listening, we're gonna end up doing something with neck training, grip. So look out for that. We'll definitely do some more. There we go. We'll do some more collaboration on here with that sort of thing when it comes to athletes. But this was a great talk, Mitch. Thank you for jumping on, and we'll touch base real soon. We'll talk real
Oh,
soon.
Nick, brother, thank you so much for having me, man. Love talking to you. We talk a whole lot off of this, so I'll probably talk to you later today, I guess.
Definitely
All
shoot
right.
me a message after this, and I'll try to get you a copy of this, and we'll figure out the details as we go.
Oh, I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for watching, and check Coach Dillon Strength out on Instagram. See all his stuff. Really good videos. Easy to implement. So that's what we're here for. I'll
Oh,
talk to
good
you
stuff.
guys. Everybody have a happy, safe weekend. Let's do this. Bye.
Peace, brother.
Peace.